No, I won't stand down. No, I won't stand down. 'Cause you can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I'm having breakfast with.
Ah, Joe, man.
Yeah.
That was a song just for the grip.
You know, I want to get Pancho to come to my house and just sing every morning when I get out of bed.
That's
gonna
exactly
start
what
the
I'm
day
doing.
in the right way.
Exactly. Hey, welcome everybody to day 3 of Breakfast with Bob. We are here at beautiful Huggos on the Rocks, and our main sponsor, EAS Mileplex. I'm a little thirsty. I think I could use a little drink. Here comes a little EAS. Oh, thank you so much.
Life has perfect timing.
See, how's that? Look, man. We're also brought to you by Hoka One Polar Velo Fix. Every one of our athletes will be receiving a Velo Fix certificate today. Normatec, 4 Seasons Hualalai, where we host our World Championship edition on Sunday. Emio Power Breather is our other sponsor, and our main man, 6-time Ironman World Champion. Give it up for the one and only Mark Allen.
Thanks, Bob. Always great to be here with you.
Always a
Kona.
pleasure to be with the Grip. So, Grip, it was funny. I was chatting with Scott Molina, and we were talking about leading into the 89 race, which turned into IronWar. And he says, you know, the year before, in 1988, the Grip, who'd won Nice 4,000 times at that point, didn't race Nice to focus on Ironman. Rob Burrell goes off and wins Nice that year. And then you come here, number flat tires in 88. Scott Molina wins his Ironman title. And then that following spring, you're training in New Zealand, and the 2 guys you're training with every day are Rob Burrell and Scott Molina, basically reminding you of 88 and everything that you could have had and didn't have. How hard was that to ride with those guys every day? And did that just fire you up?
You know, it's interesting. I've thought about that, and I realized that I just like training with those guys. So I never had that feeling like they won it and I didn't, you know, because I really knew that the reason I didn't win here had something to do with me. It wasn't necessarily that Scott Molina was at this level that I didn't feel like I could get to, or, you know, like I say, to win a race you got to show up. So Rob won Nice, and I was actually happy for those guys that they won their races. And so, you know, there was this dynamic with the 3 of us. Obviously, I'm trying to win the Ironman. I had won Nice. Molina had just won Ironman, and Rob had just won Nice. So training in New Zealand, it was kind of like we had these 3 great guys to actually elevate everybody to another level. You know, some of the training that Molina and I did down there, it blew my own mind. and I have to say with Rob, you know, he's Dutch, and the Dutch just have this tenacity and this emphasis on really training hard. And so, even though I love the guy and he's a close friend, he speaks better English than I do. When I saw him at a workout, I thought, oh, dear God, help me here, because I knew it was going to be painful. Yeah,
You knew it was going to be bad.
And I actually saw Rob just running.
He's here.
Yeah,
Group guy.
I just saw him running, and his wife was right behind him. I'm going to give him a hard time about that, but you know, yeah, he's a great guy.
So when I look at your career, obviously the IronWar event, and you win that, and what was fascinating about it to me is in 88, Dave wasn't there. Sore knee, pulled out the night before. And he had won the race at that point 6 times. You had won the race 0 times, and Dave had always been that stumbling block. So here it is, 89, and he had gone 8:28 was course record. He goes 8:10. Best day he ever had, and you won 8:09, ran a 2:40 marathon, changed everything, took over 18 minutes off the course record. What did it mean, not just to win the Ironman, but to beat the best guy on the best day he ever had?
Well, I think you summed that up there, Bob. You know, a lot of years I was cynical afterwards, thinking, why didn't I win it earlier? You know, why didn't I win it in 84 when I had the lead? Why didn't I win it in 87 when I had the lead? But I realized that, you know, to actually have that crown passed on the best day that the best guy at that point in time had ever put out, it was so fitting. You know, it's like that's only the Ironman could arrange something like that, where he and I had this head-to-head battle. Had I actually won in 1988 when he was not there, I don't know if I would have been the same athlete going into 89. I think I would have been even more afraid than ever, because it would have been, okay, here comes Mark Allen. He won last year, but Dave Scott wasn't there.
He borrowed his crown.
Back. Yeah, and so I think it was just this convergence of some really amazing elements that would have never happened otherwise. You know, Dave was fired up because obviously, you know, he'd had to pull out just days before the race in 88. So he had something to prove. I'd been there 6 times already. I hadn't won it. I had something to prove. But ultimately, I think both of us were really just out there trying to give the absolute best that we could. And because the two of us were together for, you know, 8 hours of racing, that just elevated everything to a level that nobody else had seen. Ironically, each of us had kind of looked at what could happen on the ideal day, and I think in our minds we thought, you can go 7:45 here.
Yes.
If it's ideal, but as all of you know, Ironman is never ideal, right? And so that was what each of us had kind of focused our training around, trying to target that year. And out of that, obviously, you know, breaking the world's record by 17, 18 minutes, me setting my best time by almost 28 minutes to that date, having the difference be 58 seconds. And when we were here for the 25th anniversary, somebody asked us, do you know where third place was?
20 minutes back, Greg Welch.
Yeah, well, we looked at each other, and neither of us had a clue, because we were in this bubble. Welch was 3 miles behind us.
Yeah. And what's funny about that is at that point with you guys, and even when I talked to Dave, I don't know how many months ahead of time, I said, well, Dave, what do you think is going to happen this year? And he goes, well, Molina had run 3:02. He says, if somebody runs a 3:02 marathon, they're going to be 3 miles down the road. And the run is going to be, at that point, I think Dave had gone 2:48 or something in the marathon. So he says, somebody is going to win this race going 2:40 or 2:41, and there's only 2 people in the race who can do that, right? So he pretty much was setting it up that it's me and Mark. It's mano y mano. And even when we tried to set up that photo shoot with the 2 of you.
Right.
So I wanted to set up a photo shoot with these guys. I called Dave up. This is March, right? The race is until October. Dave, I want to shoot you and Mark together. He goes, great, have Mark come here to Davis, right? Call Mark up. That's great, have Dave come here to Boulder. And so neither of them were going to do it. So Dave Epperson, the photographer, set up a backdrop, drove to Davis, shot Dave, drove to Boulder, shot Mark, and we composed him on the cover of the magazine, because they would never appear together at that point, because there's energy. If he's coming to my place, I win. Right? So what did winning that race, how did that change you? Because you never lost here again.
You know, there were a lot of missing pieces that came together for me during that race. One of the big keys was indeed going down to New Zealand and training with Molina, training with Rob Burrell, 2 of the best in the world, and simplifying my life enough so that all I had to focus on was just my training, and I saw what I was able to do when I took away all the distractions. It's like, this is how you need to focus to be the best you can possibly be.
Right.
You know, that was the first year that I really felt like I was able to come here to the Big Island and feel at peace or feel at home. Prior to 89, I was just like intimidated by it. You know, I would go to Nice and just get off the plane and go,
I'm home.
Bonjour, mes amis. You know, and I would come here and it would be like, you know, how can you win a race that you're going, you're afraid of the island, afraid of this intensity, afraid of the energy. And in 89, I came here. I went to a little place along the ocean, right along the run course.
Yes.
And, you know, I kind of had a talk with the island. I said, hey, just let me feel peace here. And it was the first year that I really did. And so that was another element. And you know, those 2 key things kept building throughout those next 5 Ironmans that I came back and did here.
So you take off in 94. Your Mats, who just qualified for Kona, your son, was born that year, and then came back. And coming back at the age of 37. And that year was fairly a struggle going in, right? Just getting your body back. You basically lose a year. That's hard to get it back. And now there's a whole new wave of athletes, a Thomas Hellriegel. And take us through that day, because that to me is a crowning achievement of your career. Because you come into that race, your Hellriegel goes by like you're standing, like he's on a motorcycle, right? And what type of lead did he have?
Yeah, that was a very, very tough day. Needless to say, I was 37. I was coming back trying to win my 6th title in 6 starts, which nobody had done. At
Right.
that point, nobody had won the Ironman at age 37. Second level of impossibility. I came off the bike 13 and a half minutes behind Hellriegel, who was 13 years younger than me. Nobody had closed that gap to be the champion. And so when I came off the bike, I thought, you know, somebody yelled out from the crowd, "He's 13 and a half minutes ahead of you. Go catch him." And I'm thinking, gee, that's great advice. Thank you, you know. And I just thought, I'm having the worst Ironman of my career here. You know, I had never been out of the lead by 13 and a half minutes. And so, you know, so much of this race is kind of the energy and what you're telling yourself and connecting with something positive, connecting with the island itself. And so I was running out of the transition area, ran up to the top of the first hill, trying to just draw in as much positive energy as I could from the crowd. I got to the top of the first hill, and there were 3 old ladies staring at me, cheering, and they go, "Go Mark, go Mark, go Mark. Ah, he doesn't look so good."
That's always helpful.
Yeah, and that thought sunk in, and about a mile later, I felt so bad. It tipped the scales, and I thought, I can't do it. You know, Hellriegel, he's so far ahead, 13 and a half minutes. I have to make up 30 seconds a mile every mile if I'm going to catch him at the finish line. And I said, that's impossible. And 100 yards up was my hotel. I go, call it a day. You don't need this. You've won 5.
Got 5. Yeah.
You know, just quit. And, you know, if we quit, obviously there is no chance of realizing our dreams. Even if we stay with it, if we give up, there is no chance of realizing our dreams. And I had done a lot of extra training with Brant Secunda, I had started studying shamanism with in 1990. He was a key for helping me get that internal space in the right place, you know, because when you're out there in the race, nobody looks at their Garmin profiles from a month ago to figure out how they're doing. You have to deal
Stay
with
in the moment.
yourself.
Yeah.
And he had said, no matter what, keep going. It's never over until it's over. That was one of the main sayings that the Huichol Indians say. They say, no matter how impossible something looks, take that next step and the one after it and the one after it, because it's never over until it's over. And, you know, if there's any place that plays out, Ironman is the place that does. And so I just tried to get my mind to be quiet, which is another thing that Brant helped me with, because, you know, when your mind's going crazy out there, when you're telling yourself, I can't do it, that guy's 13 years younger than me, there's a gap that nobody's made up, there's the hotel, just call it a day. That does not help you out.
No.
And you can have all of your pre-race mantras and positive affirmations. If you can even remember them, you won't believe them.
Not at that point.
You won't. I feel good and strong. No, I don't. I feel like I'm ready to quit. And so I just got my mind to be quiet. And then the answer came. Something just said, take it to the finish line. And then, you know, the cynical part goes, take it to the finish. I came here to win. And then I thought about it and I realized, you know what? The way I feel right now, if I could get to that finish line, that would be a victory.
That's a victory.
And, you know, I got into the sport in 1982 to be an Ironman finisher. I knew this was going to be my final Ironman. And I said, yes, no matter what it takes, even if I have to walk every step of this marathon, I will get to that finish line. I will be an Ironman finisher in my final Ironman. And literally, in the instant that I made that commitment, Greg Welsh
stopped to stretch.
10 seconds ahead of me up the road, stopped to stretch his back. He was having some back problems. I passed him, making the first pass, and suddenly the whole world of opportunity began to open back up. And I moved from 5th to 4th, and then into 3rd, and then into 2nd. And then with 8 miles to go in the marathon, I was told Hellriegel was 4 minutes ahead of me. And so, you know, let me do the math. I was making up 30 seconds a mile every mile, but I was still only on pace to catch him at the finish line. And
He was running 2:58. It's not like he had a bad run.
yeah, and he was not slowing down. You know, I had not made up anything relatively faster than when I started. I was still 30 seconds a mile behind him. And so even though I was closing the gap, I was only on pace to catch him at the finish line, which is not a good place to catch a guy who's 13 years younger than you when you were sprinting for a world championship. And then, you know, my mind went crazy again. And this, you know, it's interesting because here I've won the race 5 times, and I'm still struggling with myself. You know, and people think that, oh, you look so good the whole way through. No, there were 1,000 moments when I wanted to quit. And so, Hell Regal, I can't see him yet. I can't make up enough time there. I'm running out of territory here. When you're in a moment like that, there's 2 critical words you can tell yourself that will help you out. Shut up.
It's true.
I got my mind to be quiet,
Yeah.
and then something else Brant said just before I came to the island. He said, if you need help, call out. That island is alive. It will help you. It will hear you. And so I got my mind to be quiet, and I said, Big Island, help me here. I will give everything I have, even if I can completely blow up in these next miles, even if I come in an inch behind Hell Regal, I'm going to give everything I have, but I need something extra. The mile after that, I made up 40 seconds. The one after that, a little over 50. The mile after that, I made up 1 minute and 15 seconds on the guy who had been leading for over 6 hours. Finally, at mile 23, I came up behind Hell Regal and made the final pass of my Ironman career. Went on to win that 6th and final title. And, the difference in our times was about 2.5 minutes,
2.5,
which is actually, if you figure it as a percent of the total amount of time we race each other, the difference in our times was less than 0.5%. A very small difference on a very, very long day. And as you said when you asked me the question about this race, in the middle of it, I thought I was having the worst race of my life. But when I look back at what it took to actually hold it together that entire way and pull that victory off, that was the greatest race I ever put together.
Well, because normally you're at the front, and now you're coming from behind. You've never had to do that before. That was a totally different game. And the fact you're 37, it's your last race. It's sort of like when we look at other sports, Ted Williams hitting a homer in his last time at bat. When you're in the spotlight and it's your final day there, and you have what I consider the greatest race of your life, and you're able to basically drop the microphone and go, I'm out. I'm the 6-time Ironman World Champion. It's been nice. You guys go sweat all you want. I'm going to do other stuff. That you knew as soon as you finished. That was it.
I knew before I started that was it. And so, when there's no more tomorrows, that helps you elevate it to a completely new level. And ironically, that year I ran all the way through the finish line. My biomechanics were perfect. Usually they break down around mile 20. I had one little blister instead of a whole feet full of blisters. I mean, it was the perfect race. Someone gave me my son Matt's. I was holding him. I did the NBC interview where they asked me about the event, how it went for me. The interview ended. I took 2 steps. I was really, really done. The race was done. I'd won. I gave the interview. 2 steps later, I was holding Matt's. I'm walking to go into the medical tent. My arm starts to shake. And I go, somebody has to take him or I'm going to drop him. Somebody took my son. I took 2 more steps. My legs cramped up. They turned into sticks. I couldn't move. I bent over. I started throwing up. And I'm thinking, how bizarre. I mean, I had the greatest race of my life. I gave the interview. My commitment was over. And then my body just completely fell apart. The volunteers were great. They scooped me up. They literally carried me with grace and dignity into that medical tent. And that's how I ended my career.
I love that. How about a round of applause for the grip, the 6-time Ironman World Champion, Mr. Mark Allen, Poncho Man. Take out that legendary chat.
There ain't no easy way out. And I'm saying, hey, baby, it's breakfast with Bob.
Poncho Man! Thanks, everybody! How good was he?